Welcome to the RFP Success Show with host Lisa Rehurik, the #1 sought-after authority on RFP success. Each week, we bring you information, strategies, or resources to help you win more business through RFPs and have a little fun doing it. Let's get this week's episode started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the RFP Success Show podcast. I'm Lisa Rehurik, your host, and I am here today with Ganesh Shankar. Ganesh is co-founder and CEO of RFPIO, which is an automation tool for RFP responses, and we're going to learn a lot about that today. We have had RFPIO on before, but we have not ever had Ganesh, and again, co-founder and CEO, so we got the big wig here with us and excited to talk to him. So Ganesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate you having us. I'm pretty excited about it. Although I'm not sure whether I'm at the big week or not, but I'm happy to share my thoughts on what this could be. So I'm pretty excited about this podcast.
Wonderful. Well, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this and what your background is with RFPs or technology or both?
Yeah, absolutely. Prior to RFPIO, I was working as a product manager for another enterprise software company, part of which I had to work with my sales teams to respond to quite a lot of RFPs. I've been there for almost 8 years. Technically, have calculated how many RFPs I've responded the last day when I quit the job. There's about 535 or 30 RFPs that I've responded over a period of 7 to 8 years. So
wow.
in our user shoe, so that prompted us look for an automation application to help us manage this response process. That's when we looked into the market to have an application, and we couldn't connect anything at that time. So we decided to take on our own. So myself and three of our co-founders, or three of us, started this company who had a similar background responding to RFPs.
Okay. That's great. I love that you have the background in it too, because a lot of times with technology, there's somebody that maybe knows technology, but doesn't necessarily know the ins and outs. And, we know RFPs can be a little bit complex. So I love that you've got that background.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So how does a software like RFPIO really help somebody manage a complex project like an RFP? Because we know they can be small and somewhat easy. I say easy in air quotes for anybody not watching, but mostly they're complex and arduous. How does RFPIO help?
I'm glad that you referred it as a project, because nobody should see RFP as a document that they receive. They have to fill out a document. It is a project by itself. An application like this, we see 5 key pillars, Lisa, when you're looking at an RFP software, how the software can benefit our core fund users. 5 pillars. Number 1 pillar, like you talked about, project management. It's no longer a document. It truly requires a project management skill. When every RFP, no matter what size of the RFP is, what timing of the RFP is, every RFP will have a time deadline. Every RFP will have a cost element to it. Every RFP will have a scope element to it, which is nothing but a classic project management, right? You have to treat it as a project. So that's number 1 pillar, what we call as a
huge
project management. The second key pillar, I call it as content management. You need to have, the system should manage the content that can be, repurposed, reused, but not reinvented every time, right? You don't reinvent this whole content every time. So you need to have a very good system that can efficiently manage the content. That's pillar number 2. The third pillar, I would say, is collaboration. It truly requires a village to complete an RFP. It is not one person job. Yes, I understand the proposal managers are the primary owners, but it truly requires multiple stakeholders to chime in. So that's the third thing. That is what I consider the most important piece in the puzzle of this whole 5 piece, pillars that I was talking about. These applications should facilitate collaboration with multiple stakeholders, multiple subject matter experts, so-called SMEs. So it has to facilitate. And the fourth pillar, I would say, is business intelligence and reporting. These days, you cannot measure without data. You cannot measure the efficiency. You cannot understand how anything is doing without data, without reporting. So you need the business intelligence to make an informed decision. That's the key pillar 4. The last and final piece, I would call as an integration pillar. This application needs to integrate with an existing ecosystem of technologies, be it processes, be it anything that you already have in place. It can't be a point solution, then it doesn't solve the purpose. So these are the 5 key pillars that I see an RFP platform like RFP.io can bring to enterprises trying to solve this complex project. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes great sense. And I love those 5 pillars because at the RFP Success Company, we teach pillars as well in a different way, of course, because we're facilitating slightly differently, but a lot of the same concepts. And when we talk a lot about building a winning RFP culture, like if you want to have a company that has a winning RFP culture, it can't just be, as you said, a document that we're going to quickly respond to and send out the door. You've got to have all the pieces of the puzzle built into the culture, and those 5 pillars are huge. If you don't have that built into your culture, you're not going to be winning more than you're losing.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So when we talk about collaboration, because collaboration is really important and it's where people get stuck a lot. As a matter of fact, I'm working with a company right now and their internal collaboration is a nightmare. How can automation improve collaboration? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, that's going to make it worse, especially depending on what generation you're working with. So tell me a little bit about how the automation can really improve with the SME collaboration with the SMEs.
I think this is one question relates to me more than anything. I feel like, because in my prior life, although my title was not proposal manager, my title was product manager, which is so-called stakeholder or SME. I was a subject matter expert who get to work on the RFPs, quite a lot, but I was not the owner of the entire process, right? But if I look back, what as a SME or a subject matter expert frustrated me, or where I felt like it is making more sense, is if the application, the automation that we are trying to implement becomes a part of my day-to-day work. What I mean by day-to-day work is it is not something I have to do it outside of my day job. I should not go to separate place to update the content. I should not have a separate place to go and do something to maintain this content so that my proposal managers can use it. If it is part of, say, I'm working on, most of the time product managers work on, a tool called Jira. Integrated platform like that can help, RFAO integrates with Jira, by the way, so that if you're a product manager, you can start working from that itself. You don't need to do an extra step to maintain the content further. So that's what of work the SMEs are doing. They don't need to step out from their day job if they're maintaining, already working on a different application that on their day for their primary job. Find out a way to integrate a platform like this. We integrate with SharePoint as well. So the customer, SMEs doesn't feel it is an overwhelming task that they have to step out of their primary job and do something else to satisfy the needs of a proposal manager. If it is part of the process, I think the adoption will be more, so that it is my anyways I'm going to do it. If that benefits my proposal manager, I would be more excited. Otherwise, if you are sending me a separate document or having me go to do something else somewhere else, that sometimes may frustrate, and that may lead to less adoption of these technologies. Making it seamless makes it more. And there are certain instances where you cannot avoid having them to deal with the platform outside of their normal course. But in that case, what I would recommend is show them the value, show them the benefit. For me, the biggest benefit, or the biggest, I would say, when I was working at the previous company, the biggest friend, or the highest used is Control F, right? I use Control F to find whatever comes in and copy and paste it. But did I copy the right content? Did I copy the latest content? Did I copy the accurate messaging? No, I don't have that. So, but when I started using, now with RFA, I can clearly see before even I use Control F, I can validate if I'm going to use it. When did I last updated it? How many times this was used? Whether this used in, let's assume I've used this content in 20 RFPs. Did the content end up 15 winning RFPs or 5 winning RFPs, 15 losing RFPs? I now have the metrics before I reuse the content. I don't even need to type in a single word. That content exists and I can repurpose that. That's what I refer to. You can, reuse, repurpose, but not reinvent every time, right?
Yeah. And so, a couple of key things that you said there. The whole version control thing is a nightmare, right? And I still have clients that use Word documents back and forth. Let's email them back and forth. And at some point, the document just gets too big. And anyway, it can definitely be a nightmare with version control. So it sounds like that collaboration piece really helps a lot with version control. Did I catch that correct?
Yes, version control is one, and also the validity of the content, right? You're talking about how
Yeah.
current content version is. Yeah, you are calling it a version, but I'm calling it as how current the content is. This is the quality of the content, right? It's not just versioning. The quality of the content also is key.
Yeah.
Use the metrics. If you're using a simple Word or Excel document, you may not know how many times this piece of content has been used. You may be thinking that I'm using this content. Yes, you may have the latest version of it, but you maybe end up using this piece of content 15 times. What if you've lost 14 RFPs that you've used that content and you've only won? So the winning ratio is almost you're 95% you're losing with that content. You don't have the metrics to back it up. So you're just using Control F and find so copy Control A, Control C, and Control V.
Right.
Shortcuts that I'm talking about, right? That is not the right way to do. You need to be methodical. You need to be very systematic when it could be 2-line answer, but still that needs a validation.
Yeah, and it's true. It's also one of the things that I find with a lot of my clients or a lot of our clients is that, they kind of use the same content from the last RFP that was used from the last RFP that was used. And if you go all the way back, it's been like 10 years that where they actually started, right? The origin of that. So how, that's actually another question then is that does RFP IO and how does it, if it does, help with keeping the content fresh and current so that they make sure, and you maybe have explained it in all of that, but I want to circle back with that specific question and have you answer that.
Yeah. In fact, I think, I've not answered this question before. I'll answer it. Our fundamental belief at RFPIO is don't try to bring the subject matter expert at the 11th hour, right? You cannot bring him at the last minute and then you already scrambled it and then now you're having someone else who has no visibility. Now you're asking them to scramble it. It's a bigger problem. So bring them in the beginning. When I say beginning, what I mean by beginning is you don't need to have an RFP to have the subject matter experts to store the content, to maintain the content. Rather, have them, what we call as a library of content that can be repurposed. So bring the subject matter experts process upfront in the process. So what happens is the subject matter experts maintain the content. In that case, what happens is you can say, okay, anything related to pricing, anything related to company history, or anything related to a specification is owned by person A, person B, person C. Content owner to check the validity of the content. The content might not have changed at all. All they have to do is, this looks good, I'm not changing it. They're giving a thumbs up, that's it. Or they can change it, this is good, I'm going to edit it, instead of now paying the subject matter expert, hey, is this the right content? Is this correct? You don't need to do that at the last minute. You're doing it up front so that the downstream teams who use the content is getting the right content.
Yeah, so I love that, right? Great process. But do you think people actually do it that way, or do they procrastinate and then end up at the 9th hour anyway?
And it's a mix. It is a mind shift that we are trying to solve, right? It has always been a very reactive process. We are trying to be maybe more proactive. It is not an overnight change. I think it is a movement that we are trying to do, and we are educating the market. That's why if you look at a lot of our content towards MEs or how beneficial this could be, it is definitely a movement. It is a change process that we fundamentally do. And I think we are a big proponent of that because I've lived this SME life. If I had this system like this, because end of the day, if you look at you can validate this. A lot of times what happens is these customers or these users tend to maintain massive Excel sheet. It goes way back to 15 years of content, but it is not correct. The dynamics have changed, the business nature has changed, the product details have changed. The moment you start automating the whole process, I think people will see the benefit of it. And what we are seeing is a sea change. Making them over this hump is what the challenge is. I think that's where companies like us, educating our users, being thought leader, education material, training, those are things that we bring to the table. That's where we see a benefit. But it is a process that we are going through. And we have seen companies successfully adopting that process. Mindset is first mind shift, and then process changes makes the whole process similar and easier for them to manage this.
The mindset shift has to kind of come from leadership, and some of the challenges there is that they don't understand the pain at the tail end of the RFP response, right? So it was interesting. I was working on an RFP not too long ago, and we ended up having to fly an actuary in to the local office and have them help do the production of it. And it was a nightmare because people had procrastinated. Everything was, to the last minute, and it all flows downhill, right? So whoever's in that last final review, production, delivery, all of that gets it. And he said to us, he goes, I will never again be late on a task. But, it is hard to get people in those positions, the SMEs and the leadership, when they don't understand everything that it takes to really get that RFP out the door.
It is absolutely right. And I think that's one of the reasons why, even if you go to our website, www.rfpa.com, we have something called ROI calculator, return on investment,
Ooh,
where you
cool.
you can actually, it's free for anybody to use it. You can key in some data, how many RFPs that we are responding in a year, how many hours each one of us are putting, each one of the subject matter experts are putting, how much on an average we are spending per hour for each of these roles. It would give you a massive result. Very recently I was with one of our customers. They do literally thousands of the massive avionics companies, so they do a lot of RFPs. I think they said about 28 different departments get involved in each RFP.
Wow.
Even if I had to put in one person, you are talking about 28 different people working on one RFP. Even if I have to put in a 3 hour on an average per person, you are looking at 84 hours. I'm talking about on one RFP I'm talking about.
Right.
Hours, you talk about then just give on an average $50. I'm just throwing in some random number. You're talking about for each RFP, that itself is a $4,200. One
Yeah.
RFP. I'm just
Wow.
saying, if RFPIO can save them 10% of it. I'm not talking about the dollar actually. If what I mean by 10% or even 15%, on an average, our customers report they create an efficiency of about 35 to 40%. Even let's take a bare minimum of 10%, right? If you are responding to an RFP in 10 hours, if the systems can bring down that cost or time less 10%, which is 9 hours you're doing, that 1 hour can be repurposed for responding to more RFPs, which means you can bring in more revenue to the company, which means you're being more efficient. With the same amount of time, same amount of people, you're creating more revenue. So that's how we communicate that to the stakeholders up at the top, talking about this is not a document formatting issue. You're talking about a revenue opportunity here. The time that you can gain is a revenue opportunity.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I love that because I tell people all the time, like, this is a sales opportunity. This isn't just a thing that you have to answer a bunch of questions to. And if you don't put as much value on the response as you do on the outcome's going to be crap every time. So yeah. I love that. I love that ROI calculator. I'm going to have to go check it out. And we'll include a link to that actually in the show notes so that people can get to that. I want to shift a little bit here and talk to you about AI, artificial intelligence. It's a big buzzword that's been flying around, right? And I know that I hear a lot of times people are like, is AI going to take over? Is your company going to be out of business? People ask me that all the time. So I'd love your thought around AI, and is it going to replace people's jobs? Is there a possibility that AI-enabled RFP software like RFPIO will replace proposal managers? Give us your thoughts on that.
I strongly don't believe that's going to happen. It's not going to replace. No, nothing can replace human brain. I don't believe. We do have AI feature built into the platform. That is what we call it as. There are a lot of key elements. We call it as auto response. In fact, if you drill down, that is nothing but assisting human beings to be better, to do their job better. It is the word assist is what you're not going to replace it. Replace the human being. I would rather say it is going to assist the human being to be more efficient, more the thought process, providing more data behind the decision that are making instead of randomly making certain decisions. So that's where I see artificial intelligence or even the machine learning could help the proposal managers being more productive, being, because I don't see that job going away, because it is one of the key essential roles we strongly feel at RFPI as proposal managers, because they have the tenacity to control the environment, and then they are the ones who are delivering the output. I don't see that role going away. The technologies that we are talking about, the artificial intelligence or you being it machine learning, will help them to be more productive, assist them to be more productive. That's what I see the artificial intelligence role is.
Yep. I agree with you too. And I think, one of the things that great proposal managers do is they bring in the strategy, kind of a strategic thinking perspective, and helping make sure that the theme is interwoven and that the questions are answered in an influential way that is going to capture the attention. None of that can really be done by AI. So I wholeheartedly agree with you. So you talked a little bit about the ROI calculator, and I'm sure that that's part of the answer to this next question. But what advice would you give to RFP teams that are trying to convince their leadership to get on board with an RFP software? Because, of course, there's an investment attached to that. We deal with that as well in my company, getting people on board with the investment. How do you help them convince their leaders that this is a good investment?
So, there are two ways to look at it. I think two key points can be presented to the management. Obviously, we talked about the ROI calculator and talking about the revenue opportunity, right? That's one. I think we talked about that. The second, I think we didn't talk about is as response management, right? When I say response management, what I mean by response management is these systems, it's curating the enterprise content, right? It is collecting the enterprise content and centralizing it. The content for other use cases. For example, very recently we had our user conferences. We had seen when they don't find the content in their regular system, they are using RFP.io to respond to those queries. Ms. X, can you provide some basic information about your product, some basic information about your company, 3 references. It is not an RFP, it is not an advertisement, it is just 3 questions in an email. So you get the email, but the content that you're generating for these proposals can be repurposed for a different use case here. You're talking about, it could be a person who's on the phone, the customer's asking, hey, how does this work? You don't need to put them on hold and then, hey, I'm going to check with the product expert. They have the content, right? The product expert has already given that content in the RFP process. That can be repurposed for a support call. Yeah. So the whole justification for a platform like this is not just RFPs. We are talking about a bigger overarching theme here, which I call it as a response management, right? How would you respond to these pre-sales queries or even the sales queries that you're getting so that the entire company speaks the same language? Why put so much effort in the RFP process and not use that content for a phone call? Still, it is on outgoing. You're not putting as a document here, but you're on a phone talking to a prospect. That is, they say, the bigger piece I think we are trying to accomplish, or we are trying to educate the market. It is not just RFP software. Yeah. It is even beyond that. It is the response management software that we are talking about here.
Yeah, and that's really huge. If you think about different departments, systems tend to break down, and one person over here is giving this piece of information that is outdated, and this person over here is given. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And what a great way to use that outside of just responding to RFPs. And I love that approach to helping show leadership that there's value in all aspects of the business. Because as a small business owner myself right now, we're in growth mode, and I'm feeling the pains of systems and things that are not connected. They worked well when it was just me, but now I've got employees and more team members, and now you have to pull all that together. So bravo on that. Now, yeah. Is there anything else that people do kind of people that are deep in the throngs of RFP responses? What else can they do to streamline their RFP response process even without RFP software?
So the main thing I would say is creating a nicely defined SLA, agreement between different team, and that, you don't need to have a software for this. I'm talking about a general process in place, who owns the content, there should be a buy-in from the subject. You're making sure the subject matter experts buy in. You're not talking about the pure grammatical English. I'm talking about the content as such. That need to be owned by someone else, right? The product managers, the technical managers, or the subject matter experts, they should own the process of giving the content. They should take that content. On top of it, the whole process need to be having an SLA with the sales team. They can't throw in at the last minute and say, hey, we have to respond to this 50-page RFP and it is due tomorrow. And you can't have that. More proactive, have the SLA, or, divide and conquer, right? In that case, you got to, you can't just have, yes, we want to get business, but it is not that proposal manager's job. Understanding who owns what is the key piece for this process. Yeah. And it is not just proposal managers. I think I sometimes pity these proposal managers because they are scrambling to get all this in one place. They need the support from the management team to be successful, because end of the day, what they're doing is not document. It is dollars. It is revenue they're bringing in. You got to be more attentive. It got to be more, they need that support. And having the SLA and clearly different process is going to be way more helpful than first having, before implementing a software like RFPIO.
Yeah, it's a great point. I always say poor proposal managers, they get the grunt of the problems when things don't go well or when they lose. They're the ones that are with the spotlight is shined on, but when they win, they tend to not get the glory. So I always feel bad. Proposal managers can be in a tough place depending on their leadership. So love that. All right. So what's the biggest misconception you think when it comes to RFP softwares? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Based on our experience of working for last almost 4 years, almost close to 1,800 customers right now, when customers look for a software like this, reminding back those 5 pillars, they always tend to start with only one pillar, content management. They think this application is content. No, that's not the only thing that you have to look for. Then the content management can be maintained in an Excel sheet or a Google Doc. To solve the whole problem, you have to have a holistic approach. All those 5 key pillars, which is that's why people don't really, because we are opening their eyes on these 5 pillars. So the misconception is these softwares are just meant to solve the content issue. It is not content issue I'm talking about. Content issue is one piece. There's a project management issue. There is a collaboration thing. There's an integration thing. There's an intelligence element to it. So that's the holistic view that is missing today in the market, because they always look for this one dot or one pillar, but that's not the only thing.
Wow. So listeners, if you are in the process right now of wanting to get software and you need to convince your leadership, this is the podcast that you need to share with them so that they hear it from somebody who knows for sure. So Ganesh, this has been fantastic. Thank you for being here. How can people get in touch with you and RFPIO?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Lisa, for having us. So it's very easy to remember our name, RFPIO. So it's very easy. RFPIO.com. You can reach us at info@rfp.com. It's an easy email to remember. We will be happy to assist you in anything that any of your listeners want to understand about the process or the material that we provide. We start with certifications these days about a lot of things are happening at RFPIO. We'd be more than happy to share when somebody has a question or an email. We'd be more than happy to answer their queries.
Great. And all of that will be in the show notes for the listeners. So again, Ganesh, thank you for being here. And you all have been listening to the RFP Success Show. Again, I am your host, Lisa Rehurik. If you have not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the RFP Success Show so you do not miss an episode. And we'll hear you back again next time.
You have been listening to the RFP Success Show with RFP expert Lisa Rehurik, author of the RFP Success book. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, make sure you click the subscribe button so you don't miss a show. And thanks for spending time with us today.